The sweet scent of jasmine incense couldn't mask the acrid smell of judgment that hung in the great hall. I stood in the center of the stone circle, my bare feet numb against the cold marble, while hundreds of eyes bore into me like daggers. The claiming ceremony, meant to be a celebration, had morphed into my public execution, not of body, but of worth. "Another daughter," Elder Voss announced, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling adorned with paintings of great alpha warriors, all male. "The fourth female child born to Omega Eleanor. My name," once whispered with reverence as the chosen mate of Alpha King Dominic, now dripped from his lips like poison. I kept my gaze fixed on the intricate swirls of the marble floor, watching as a tear splashed against the stone, creating a perfect dark circle that evaporated almost instantly. Just like my value in this kingdom. The assembled pack members shifted in their seats. Some whispered behind jeweled hands. Others didn't bother to hide their disgust. In a world where alpha sons meant power, where beta sons meant stability, my body had betrayed not only me, but the entire Northern Kingdom by producing 4 daughters in succession. "The royal bloodline requires sons," Elder Voss continued, his ceremonial robe sweeping dramatically as he circled me. "The future of our kind depends on strong alpha males to lead and protect, yet the king's chosen Omega has failed in her most fundamental purpose." I clutched the small silver pendant hanging at my throat, my mother's parting gift before she died. The etching showed a wolf with her pups beneath a full moon. "Our strength isn't always in our teeth," she'd told me. "Sometimes it's in what we choose to endure." The cool metal against my fingertips anchored me as the whispers grew louder. My long blonde hair, once my pride, the pale gold locks that had first caught Dominic's eye, hung limply around my face, unwashed and tangled after 3 days in the birthing chamber. I hadn't even been allowed to see my newborn daughter before being dragged to this ceremony. Another girl, another failure. I sensed rather than saw Dominic enter. The collective intake of breath, the sudden straightening of spines, the drop in temperature as his cold power flooded the room. For 3 years I had been his mate, his chosen Omega, the one who was supposed to bear him the sons that would secure his dynasty. For 3 years, I had felt his initial tenderness harden into disappointment with each daughter born. "The ancient laws are clear," Elder Voss announced, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that nonetheless carried to every corner of the great hall. "An Omega who cannot produce male heirs may be set aside." Set aside. Such a gentle phrase for what it meant. Cast out, stripped of status, left to survive on the fringes of pack society. My daughters would be raised by others, taught to be ashamed of their mother. I would never hold my newborn again. I forced myself to look up then, to find Dominic's face among the crowd. He sat on his obsidian throne, carved to resemble a snarling wolf. When I first arrived at the Northern Court, that throne had terrified me. Later, I found myself tracing its contours with fascinated fingers while Dominic watched with amused eyes. Now, it was merely the seat from which my sentence would be delivered. He was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are, sharp-edged and severe. His dark hair was pulled back tightly, accentuating the strong angle of his jaw, the high slash of his cheekbones. But it was his eyes that had always undone me, deep amber that caught the light like pools of honey. Eyes that could warm with laughter or freeze with rage in an instant. Those eyes met mine now, and I saw nothing. No warmth, no coldness. Nothing at all. "Alpha King," Elder Voss bowed deeply. "The council has convened and found that your Omega has failed in her duties. What say you?" The silence stretched like an animal waiting to pounce. Every breath in the room was held captive. Finally, Dominic spoke, his deep voice betraying no emotion. "The council's findings are noted. Not a defense, not condemnation, just acknowledgement." Somehow that hurt more than outright rejection. "The law provides 3 options," Elder Voss continued, clearly disappointed by the king's neutral response. "Banishment from the territory, reduction to servant status, or," he paused meaningfully, "replacement with an Omega of proven fertility." I knew who waited in the wings, Olivia, a beta female who had climbed the ranks through cunning and ambition. She had made no secret of her desire for Dominic, even after our mating ceremony. 3 weeks ago, I had overheard her promising Elder Voss that she would bear twin alpha sons within a year if given the chance. The council had been persuaded. A sharp pain lanced through my abdomen, my body still recovering from childbirth, and I swayed slightly. No one moved to help me. I steadied myself, one hand still clutching my mother's pendant. "Before judgment is passed," I said, my voice hoarse but clearer than I expected, "I request the right to hold my daughter one last time." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not part of the ceremony, not part of the plan. Elder Voss's face contorted with annoyance. "That is not—" "Bring the child," Dominic interrupted, his tone making it clear this was not a request. The elder's mouth snapped shut, though his eyes burned with fury. He gestured sharply to a beta nurse who stood at the periphery of the hall, holding a small bundle wrapped in the royal furs. As she approached, my heart pounded so violently I thought it might shatter my ribs. I had carried this child beneath my heart for 9 months, felt her kicks and movements, sung to her in the quiet darkness. Yet I had not been permitted to see her face. The nurse placed my daughter in my arms with obvious reluctance, as though I might damage her somehow. The moment her weight settled against me, something unlocked in my chest. She was so small, so perfect. Her eyes were closed, her rosebud mouth pursed in sleep. A dusting of pale blonde hair, like mine, covered her delicate head, and there, at the edge of her tiny right ear, was the mark. I gasped, my fingers trembling as they hovered over the small crescent shape, silver against her pink skin, identical to the one I kept hidden beneath my own hair. "What is it?" Dominic's voice cut through the hall, suddenly alert. He rose from his throne, taking a step forward. The mark of the moon blessed, not seen in our kind for generations. A hereditary trait thought lost, one that my mother had warned me to keep secret. "They fear what they don't understand," she had whispered. "Hide it until you find those worthy of the truth." I looked up at Dominic, then at the hostile faces of the council, at the pack members leaning forward in anticipation of my disgrace. Were any of them worthy? Would the truth save us or condemn us further? My daughter stirred in my arms, her eyelids fluttering. When they opened, the entire hall fell silent. Her eyes were not the standard newborn blue, nor the expected brown of Dominic's bloodline. They were silver. Luminous, impossible silver, with pupils ringed in black. "Moon eyes," someone whispered, the words rippling through the stunned crowd. "The child has moon eyes." Elder Voss stepped back involuntarily, making the sign against evil. "Abomination," he hissed. "This proves the Omega has corrupted the royal bloodline." But Dominic was moving now, descending the dais steps with purpose, his face a study in controlled shock. The crowd parted before him like water. He stopped before me, his massive frame casting me in shadow. I held our daughter closer, protective despite knowing I had no power to shield her if he chose to reject us both. "Let me see," he commanded softly. With trembling hands, I tilted our daughter toward him, her impossible silver eyes fixed on her father's face with an awareness no newborn should possess. And then, astonishingly, she smiled. The great hall erupted in gasps and exclamations, an infant smiling minutes after birth. Another impossibility. Dominic's expression changed then, something flashing across his features too quickly for me to interpret. He reached out one large hand toward our daughter's face, and I fought the urge to pull her away. His finger gently traced the crescent mark on her ear. Then, to my shock, he brushed aside his own hair to reveal an identical mark, one I had never seen in our 3 years together. "You have the mark," I whispered, too stunned to maintain formal protocol. "How did I never—" "I hide it," he answered quietly, his eyes still fixed on our daughter. "As my father taught me to, as his father taught him." He looked up at me then, and the coldness had vanished from his gaze, replaced by an intensity that made my breath catch. "Show me," he said. With one hand still supporting our daughter, I used the other to brush back my hair, revealing the silver crescent that curved along the shell of my right ear. The mark I had concealed since arriving at the northern court, following my mother's warning. A sound like distant thunder rolled through the hall, the collective shock of hundreds of witnesses. Impossible, Elder Voss sputtered. The moon-blessed bloodline died out centuries ago. Evidently not, Dominic replied, his voice carrying an edge that silenced the elder instantly. He looked from our daughter to me, his eyes no longer unreadable but filled with something that made my heart stutter. Wonder, confusion, and something deeper I couldn't name. The ceremony is concluded, he announced to the hall, though his eyes remained locked with mine. Everyone out. No one moved at first, too shocked by this departure from protocol. Now! Dominic roared, his alpha power surging through the room like a physical force. The hall emptied in seconds, even Elder Voss retreating with obvious reluctance, leaving me standing alone with Dominic and our daughter in the vast, silent space. And then, as the heavy doors boomed shut, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, the most feared wolf in 7 kingdoms, did something no one had ever witnessed. He knelt before me. I stared down at Dominic's bowed head, my mind struggling to process this reversal. The Alpha King kneeling before an Omega. It defied every hierarchy, every tradition our society was built upon. My daughter shifted in my arms, making a soft cooing sound that echoed in the empty hall. Why didn't you tell me? Dominic asked, his voice low and strained. He remained on one knee, his eyes now level with our daughter's face. All these years, Eleanor, you carried this secret. I swallowed hard, the weight of 3 years' silence pressing on my chest. Would you have believed me? The marks of the moon blessed are considered myths by most, stories told to pups. My voice trembled slightly, and those who do believe, many consider us abominations. His jaw tightened at the word Elder Voss had used. Not abominations. Sacred. Sacred? I repeated, the word foreign on my tongue. My mother had never used that term. She had spoken only of hiding, of fear, of generations of moon-blessed hunted for their differences. Dominic rose to his feet in one fluid motion, his imposing height making me tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. The Northern Kingdom has always known the truth of the moon-blessed. We are descendants of the original pack, the ones who carried the moon's blessing before the Great Divide. His fingers reached out, hesitantly, to touch the mark on my ear again. The contact sent a shiver down my spine, gentle in a way Dominic hadn't been with me since our first daughter was born. My bloodline has carried the mark for generations, he continued, but it weakens with each passing century. My father's mark was faint. Mine, as you can see, is clear, but not as silver as it once would have been. His eyes dropped to our daughter, not as silver as hers. I adjusted the bundle in my arms, allowing him a better view of her face. I don't understand. If you value the mark, why hide it? Why allow the council to perpetuate the belief that only male heirs matter? A shadow crossed his features. Politics, protection. He turned away, pacing several steps toward the massive windows that lined the eastern wall of the hall. Outside, the moon was rising, a perfect crescent that mirrored the marks we carried. The other kingdoms fear what they don't understand. 3 centuries ago, there was a purge. Moon-blessed were hunted, slaughtered. Those who survived went into hiding or fled to the Northern Territories for protection. My mother never told me this part of our history, I whispered. She only warned me to keep the mark hidden, to never speak of the silver eyes that sometimes appear in our bloodline. Dominic turned back to me, his expression grave. Your mother was wise. The prejudice hasn't disappeared, it's only gone dormant. If the southern or eastern packs discovered a concentration of moon blessed in the Northern Kingdom, he left the thought unfinished, but I understood. War. Extinction. So you let them believe you wanted sons, I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. You let them think I had failed you by bearing daughters. Pain flashed across his face. I never thought you had failed me, Eleanor. You grew cold, I countered, memories of his gradual withdrawal surfacing like bruises. With each daughter born, you pulled further away. You allowed the council to shame me, to threaten my position. To protect you, he growled, frustration evident in the sudden flare of his eyes. If I had shown too much favor to you or our daughters, questions would have been asked, suspicions raised. Questions? About what? What power do the moon-blessed actually have that frightens them so? I demanded, my voice rising with the courage of someone who has already lost everything and now stands to gain it back. Dominic moved closer, lowering his voice, though we were alone in the vast hall. The silver eyes are merely the visible sign. The true gift manifests differently in each blessed child. Some can sense emotions, others can see glimpses of possible futures. The rarest can communicate mind to mind, without words. I looked down at our daughter, her impossible silver eyes now closed in peaceful sleep. And you believe she will develop these abilities, with eyes that silver, at birth? He nodded solemnly. She may become the most powerful moon blessed in generations, which makes her the most vulnerable. A chill ran through me as I understood the precarious position we were in. The ceremony that was meant to cast me out had instead exposed the very secret Dominic had been keeping. The council saw her eyes. Elder Voss called her an abomination. What happens now? Dominic's expression hardened into the mask of the Alpha King that his subjects knew. Now I remind the council who rules the northern territories. He stepped closer, one hand moving to the small of my back. The first supportive touch he had offered me in months. But first, we need to get you and our daughter somewhere safe. Our other daughters, I said urgently. Are they? They're safe in the royal nursery, he assured me. The guards are loyal to me, not the council. Relief flooded me, making my knees weak. Dominic must have sensed it because his arm tightened around my waist, steadying me. For a moment, we stood together as we hadn't in so long. Connected. A unified front. What will you tell the pack? I asked. They all witnessed what happened, his jaw set in a determined line. The truth, or part of it, that our daughter bears a sacred mark from the ancient bloodline of the northern wolves. That it is a blessing, not a curse. His eyes met mine. That you have given me exactly what I needed. Not alpha sons, but daughters who carry the old magic. It sounded impossible. A complete reversal of everything our society valued. They won't accept it easily. They don't have to accept it easily, he said, a dangerous edge to his voice. They just have to accept it. We moved swiftly through hidden corridors of the castle, passages I hadn't known existed in my 3 years as Dominic's mate. My body ached from childbirth, but adrenaline kept me moving. My daughter clutched tightly to my chest. Eventually, we reached a chamber deep within the mountain upon which the castle was built. The room was warm, lit by a fire that cast dancing shadows on stone walls covered in ancient symbols. 3 small beds occupied one corner, and my heart lurched when I saw the sleeping forms of my other daughters. Cora, age 3, twins Helena and Nora, barely 18 months old. You brought them here already, I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. Dominic nodded, his expression softening as he looked at our children. I've been preparing this place since Cora was born. Since I first suspected what? He moved to Cora's bed, gently brushing a strand of pale blonde hair, identical to mine, from her forehead. That you might be moon-blessed, that our children might inherit the mark. I stared at him, confusion building. But you saw no mark on me. I kept it hidden. Not the physical mark, he said. But there were signs. The way animals respond to you, how you always seem to know when someone is approaching before they arrive. The night of the summer solstice when you predicted the storm that saved our western territories from wildfire. He straightened, turning to face me. Small things that most wouldn't notice. But I was raised to watch for them. I settled into a rocking chair near the fire, cradling our newborn. The events of the day had left me exhausted, emotionally and physically. What do we call her? I asked, realizing we hadn't yet named our 4th daughter. Dominic knelt beside the chair, his large frame somehow less intimidating in this intimate space. In the old tradition, the first moon-blessed daughter born with silver eyes was named after the moon goddess. His finger traced the curve of her cheek. Selene, I repeated, testing the name. It felt right, ancient, and powerful. And what happens to Selene, to all of us, when the council recovers from their shock and begins plotting? A muscle twitched in Dominic's jaw. Elder Voss has been waiting for an opportunity to challenge my rule. He believes the Northern Kingdom should join the Eastern Alliance, abandon our old ways. His voice hardened. He's been nurturing factions within the council, promising power to those who support him. And Olivia? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. She's been quite open about her ambitions to replace me. Dominic's eyes flashed with anger. Olivia is a pawn. She has no moon-blessed blood. Her only value to Voss was as a potential bearer of pure bloodline sons who could be controlled by the council. What will you do? He rose, his massive frame silhouetted against the firelight. Tonight, I return to the council chamber. I remind them of ancient laws that supersede their invented traditions. I establish our daughters as sacred heirs, protected by pack law. Fear clutched at my heart, and if they refuse to acknowledge these ancient laws, Dominic's smile was cold, predatory. Then I remind them why I am Alpha King. The door opened before he could say more, and a tall woman entered silently. She had the weathered face of someone who had lived many seasons, with deep lines around eyes that held wisdom and secrets. Her silver hair was braided simply down her back, and she wore none of the finery that marked the court ladies. "Grandmother?" Dominic greeted her with unexpected warmth. "Thank you for coming." The woman nodded, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. Me in the rocking chair with Celine, my other daughters sleeping peacefully, Dominic standing guard over us all. "So it's true," she said, her voice surprisingly melodic for one so aged. "The child has the silver eyes." Dominic gestured toward us. "Eleanor, this is my grandmother, Lady Cordelia. She was advisor to my father before me." I inclined my head respectfully, suddenly conscious of my disheveled appearance. Lady Cordelia approached, moving with the quiet grace of a wolf in human form. "May I?" she asked, holding out gnarled hands. After a moment's hesitation, I passed Celine to her. The old woman cradled my daughter with practiced ease, studying her face intently. "The first true silver eyes in 4 generations," she murmured. "And the mark is strong." She glanced at me. "You've hidden yours well, child." I suspected, but couldn't be certain. "My mother taught me to conceal it," I explained. She nodded approvingly. "A wise woman, your mother." Her eyes returned to Celine. "This little one will need more than concealment. She will need guidance to control what awakens in her." "Can you help her?" I asked, hope flaring. Lady Cordelia's weathered face creased in a smile. "That's why I'm here, child, to teach what has nearly been forgotten." Dominic moved toward the door. "Grandmother will stay with you and the children. No one can enter this chamber without my blood or hers to unlock the door." "Blood magic," I whispered, the concept both foreign and familiar, like a half-remembered dream. "The oldest kind," Lady Cordelia confirmed, rocking Selena gently. "The kind the council pretends doesn't exist while secretly fearing its power." Dominic came to me then, kneeling once more to bring his face level with mine. His hand cupped my cheek, the tenderness in his touch making my throat tight with emotion. "I failed you," he said softly. "In trying to protect our secret, I hurt you, made you feel unwanted, allowed others to shame you." His amber eyes held genuine regret. "That ends tonight." Before I could respond, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was gentle but firm, a promise and an apology wrapped together. When he pulled back, his expression had shifted into something resolute and dangerous. "Rest now," he said, rising to his full height. "When I return, things will be different." "Dominic," I called as he reached the door, the weight of 3 years of misunderstanding making me bold. "Whatever you're planning, don't make our daughter's inheritance one of blood and violence." He paused, one hand on the door. "Some changes require both," he said without turning. "But I promise you this. When the sun rises tomorrow, no one in the Northern Kingdom will ever question the value of our daughters again." The door closed behind him, leaving me with Lady Cordelia and my sleeping children. The old woman settled into a chair opposite mine, Celine still cradled in her arms. "You fear his anger," she observed, her keen eyes missing nothing. I nodded, my fingers worrying the pendant at my throat. "I have seen what he's capable of when challenged." Lady Cordelia's smile was enigmatic. "You've seen only what he allows to be seen. The true power of the moon-blessed has remained hidden for generations." She glanced down at Celine. "Until now." "What do you mean?" I asked, a strange prickling sensation running along my spine. Tonight, she said, the old ways return to the northern kingdom. And tomorrow, child, you begin to learn what it truly means to be moon-blessed. In my arms, Celine's eyes opened again, impossibly alert, impossibly silver, and for just a moment, I could have sworn I heard a voice, not Lady Cordelia's, not my own, whisper within my mind. Mother, we are not alone. I woke to the soft glow of morning light, filtering through crystal prisms embedded in the ceiling, an ingenious design that brought daylight deep into the mountain chamber. For a moment, I lay disoriented, the events of the previous day swimming hazily through my mind. Then reality crashed back, the claiming ceremony, Celine's silver eyes, Dominic's revelation, his departure to confront the council. Dominic had not returned during the night. I sat up quickly, wincing at the soreness in my body. Lady Cordelia sat in the same chair where I'd last seen her, her weathered hands working a small loom. Nearby, Celine slept peacefully in a cradle carved with moon phases and ancient symbols. He hasn't returned, I said, my voice still rough with sleep. Lady Cordelia didn't look up from her weaving. The reshaping of power is not a swift process, child. I rose and moved to check on my other daughters. Cora and the twins still slept, their small faces peaceful, unaware of the upheaval surrounding our family. I brushed a kiss against each forehead, inhaling their sweet scent. What happens now? I asked, turning back to Lady Cordelia. She set aside her weaving and fixed me with those penetrating eyes. Now you prepare. The king bought us time, but your true work begins today. She gestured to a side table where a steaming mug waited. Drink. It will help restore your strength after childbirth. The liquid was bitter, but warmed me from within. As I drank, Lady Cordelia rose and approached Celine's cradle. The connection you felt yesterday, she said, her voice lowered though my other daughters still slept. The voice you heard in your mind. Tell me about it. I nearly dropped the mug. I hadn't spoken aloud about that moment, that impossible sensation of my newborn daughter's consciousness brushing against mine. How did you know? I whispered. Lady Cordelia's smile was knowing. Because I felt it too. The child reached out to both of us. She touched Celine's cheek gently. In all my years, I've never encountered a moon-blessed who manifested abilities so young. She will be extraordinary, and in great danger. From Elder Voss, from many quarters. Lady Cordelia's expression grew grave. The news will spread beyond our borders, no matter how Dominic tries to contain it. A true silver-eyed moon-blessed, born to the Northern Kingdom's royal line, the Eastern Alliance will see it as a threat to their power. The Southern territories will covet such a gift in their bloodline. My protective instincts flared. They can't have her. They can't have any of my daughters. Of course not, she agreed, which is why you must learn to use the gifts you've kept dormant all these years. I stared at her, uncomprehending. What gifts? I have the mark, yes, but I've never experienced anything like what you describe. Voices in my mind, visions of the future. Lady Cordelia's laugh was soft, like wind through autumn leaves. Child, you've been using your abilities without even realizing it. The way you anticipate others' needs before they speak them. How animals calm in your presence. The dreams that come to you at the dark of the moon. She took my hands in hers, her skin parchment thin but surprisingly warm. Your mother taught you to hide the physical mark. But did she teach you to recognize the power it represents? I shook my head slowly. She died when I was 14, before she could tell me everything, I think. The familiar ache of that loss throbbed anew. She only said to keep the mark hidden, to never trust anyone with the secret until I was certain they would protect rather than exploit it. A mother's instinct to protect her child. Lady Cordelia nodded. But now you are the mother, and your daughters, especially Celine, will need more than protection. They will need guidance. A soft cry from Celine's cradle drew us both. I lifted her carefully, marveling again at the perfection of her tiny features. In the daylight, her eyes were less dramatically silver, but still unlike any I'd seen before. Luminous, with depth beyond their newborn age. How do I guide her when I don't understand my own gifts? I asked, settling into the rocking chair to nurse Celine. Lady Cordelia returned to her seat, picking up her weaving once more. The old texts speak of 5 primary gifts among the moon-blessed, though individuals may possess one or several in varying strengths. I listened intently as she explained, my mind trying to reconcile this ancient knowledge with the world I thought I knew. The first and most common is empathic sensing, the ability to feel others' emotions, sometimes strongly enough to influence them. The second is dream walking, seeing true visions during sleep, occasionally entering others' dreams. The third is nature bonding, a deep connection to animals and the natural world. Celine suckled contentedly as Lady Cordelia continued, her voice taking on the rhythmic quality of someone reciting sacred knowledge. The fourth gift is far rarer. Truth-seeking, the ability to sense deception, to see through illusions to the reality beneath. And the fifth, rarest of all, is mind-speak, true telepathic communication. And you believe Celine has this last gift? I asked. Mind-speak? She reached for both our minds within hours of her birth, Lady Cordelia said simply. I've lived 8 decades and never encountered such raw power. The implications were staggering. If Celine could already touch minds as a newborn, what would she be capable of as she grew? The thought was both wondrous and terrifying. And me? I asked hesitantly. Which gifts do I possess? Lady Cordelia's eyes crinkled at the corners. What do you think, child? Search your memories. What moments stand out as unexplainable by ordinary means? I closed my eyes, rocking gently as Celine nursed. Memories surfaced, knowing exactly when Dominic would return from a hunting expedition before any messengers arrived, sensing a guard's ill intentions toward Cora before he'd made any threatening move. The vivid dreams that had preceded each of my daughter's births, showing me their faces before they were born. I've had dreams, I admitted, and sometimes I know things I shouldn't be able to know. Dream-walking and truth-seeking. Lady Cordelia nodded. A powerful combination, and it explains why Dominic was drawn to you, beyond your physical beauty. His primary gift is empathic sensing. He feels the emotions of his pack, which makes him a strong leader. Your abilities complement his. A thought occurred to me suddenly. Is that why all our children are daughters? Something about the moon-blessed bloodlines? Lady Cordelia's expression grew troubled. Not precisely. Moon-blessed can bear children of either gender. But she hesitated. But what? There is an old belief that when the moon goddess wishes to restore balance to the world, she sends female moon blessed in greater numbers. Her ancient eyes held mine. The last time silver-eyed daughters were born in clusters was before the Great War, 3 centuries ago. A chill ran through me. You're saying our daughters are harbingers of conflict? I'm saying the moon sees what mortals cannot, she replied carefully. Changes are coming to our world, Eleanor. Your daughters will play a role in shaping what comes after. Before I could press her further, a soft chime sounded from the chamber's entrance. Lady Cordelia rose swiftly, moving to place her palm against a smooth stone beside the door. It glowed briefly beneath her touch. It's Dominic, she announced, stepping back as the heavy door swung open. The Alpha King entered, and I barely recognized him. His clothing was torn and stained with what could only be blood. A fresh cut crossed his left cheekbone, already healing, but still angry red against his skin. His eyes burned with fierce triumph. Eleanor, he breathed, crossing the room in 3 long strides and kneeling before my chair. His gaze moved from me to Celine, still nursing contentedly. You're both well? I nodded, unable to find words as I took in his battle-worn appearance. What happened? I finally managed. Dominic exchanged a long look with his grandmother before answering. The council has been reconstituted. Lady Cordelia made a sound between a snort and a laugh, by which he means Elder Voss and his 3 strongest allies are dead, and the remaining council members have pledged their loyalty to the old ways. I stared at Dominic, searching his face. You killed them? I gave them a choice, he said, his voice hard. accept our daughters as rightful heirs under the ancient laws, or challenge my rule directly. His lip curled slightly. They chose poorly. And Olivia? I couldn't help asking. Exiled to the southern territories, he replied. She'll find no welcome among our people again. I should have been horrified by the violence, but all I felt was a profound relief. My daughters were safe, at least from internal threats. The pack? I asked. There was resistance initially, Dominic admitted. Centuries of belief don't change in a single night. But when I revealed my mark publicly and invoked the ancient rites of the Moonblessed, the older wolves remembered the stories their grandparents told them. A grim smile crossed his face. And those who couldn't accept the change were given the same choice as the council. Lady Cordelia moved to the fire, stirring the embers back to life. There will be a period of adjustment. Some will leave rather than live under the new order. Others will embrace it enthusiastically. Perhaps too enthusiastically. What do you mean? I asked. The Moonblessed were once revered as holy, she explained. There is a risk that Selene will be treated not as a child to be raised and loved, but as an object of worship. Dominic nodded, his expression softening as he looked at our daughter. Which is why we must proceed carefully. The pack knows she bears the silver eyes and the mark, but not the extent of her abilities. He glanced at his grandmother. You sensed it too? The mind speak, she confirmed. Stronger than anything in our recorded history. He exhaled slowly. Then we protect her not just from those who would harm her, but from those who would use her. I shifted Selena to my shoulder, patting her back gently. What about our other daughters? Do they share the gifts? Dominic moved to the beds where Cora and the twins still slept. I've sensed something in Cora already, a connection to animals that goes beyond normal affinity. The twins are too young to show clear signs, but they both carry the mark, though fainter than yours or Selene's. Nature bonding, Lady Cordelia nodded, useful in its own right, and often paired with empathic sensing in later years. A soft sound from Cora's bed drew our attention. My eldest daughter sat up, rubbing sleep from her eyes. When she saw her father, she broke into a delighted smile. "Papa!" she exclaimed, holding out her arms. Dominic gathered her up, his massive frame making her appear even smaller than her 3 years. The tenderness in his expression as he held her made my heart constrict. This was the father I had glimpsed in the early days of our mating, before the weight of succession and bloodlines had come between us. "Did you have sweet dreams, little moon?" he asked, using the pet name he'd given her at birth. Cora nodded solemnly. I dreamed about Selene. She was talking to me, but not with her mouth. Dominic's eyes met mine over Cora's head, a silent confirmation passing between us. Our eldest daughter might have more gifts than we'd realized. What did she say to you? I asked carefully. Cora's forehead wrinkled in concentration. She said, "The wolves are coming home." She looked up at her father with innocent certainty. "What does that mean, Papa?" Dominic's expression betrayed nothing, but I saw the subtle tensing of his shoulders. "It means changes are coming, little one. Good changes." Lady Cordelia had gone very still by the fire. "The wolves coming home," she repeated softly. "The ancient prophecy." "What prophecy?" I asked. She shook her head slightly. "Later. The child doesn't need to hear this now." Cora wiggled in her father's arms, already distracted by the promise of breakfast that Lady Cordelia mentioned. As Dominic set her down, the twins began to stir as well, their simultaneous waking another small reminder of the bond they shared. While Lady Cordelia busied herself with preparing food for the older girls, Dominic came to sit beside me, his large frame dwarfing the simple wooden chair. "There's more you haven't told me," I said quietly, reading the tension in his posture. He nodded, his voice dropping so only I could hear. "Messengers arrived during the night. The Eastern Alliance has already heard rumors of a silver-eyed child born to the Northern Throne." Fear clutched at my heart. How is that possible? It's been less than a day. They have spies within our walls, Dominic growled. Or perhaps... He glanced toward Selene. There are other ways they sensed her arrival. What will they do? Dominic's jaw tightened. Their Alpha Queen has requested a formal audience to pay respects to our newborn daughter, she claims. You don't believe her. I believe Valentina has wanted Northern Territory for decades, he said flatly, and a child with Selene's gifts would be a powerful addition to her bloodline. The implication was clear. They might seek to take Celine by force or guile. My arms tightened instinctively around my daughter. "When do they arrive?" I asked. 3 days, Dominic replied. "Barely enough time for you to recover from childbirth, let alone prepare for court politics." "I'll be ready," I said with more confidence than I felt. "We have to protect her." Dominic's hand covered mine where it rested on Celine's back. "We will. But there's something else you should know." His amber eyes held mine intently. "The prophecy Lady Cordelia mentioned. The wolves coming home. What does it mean?" He glanced toward his grandmother, now helping the twins wash their hands before breakfast. "It speaks of a time when the scattered moon-blessed would return to their ancestral lands in the north, when a silver-eyed daughter would unite the fractured packs and restore the old magic to the world." His voice dropped even lower. "It's said this return marks the beginning of the greatest challenge our kind has faced since the Great Divide." "A challenge from whom?" I whispered. Dominic's expression darkened. That part of the prophecy was lost, or deliberately obscured. He looked down at Celine. "But whatever comes, our daughter stands at the center of it." Celine stirred in my arms, her impossible silver eyes opening to fix on her father's face. And though no sound passed her lips, I felt it again. That strange sensation of another consciousness brushing against mine. Danger coming. But not alone. Never alone. From Dominic's sudden intake of breath, I knew he had felt it too. Our newborn daughter's voice, impossible and undeniable, speaking directly into our minds. "No," he agreed softly, touching her cheek with gentle reverence. "Never alone." The 3 days before the Eastern Alliance's arrival passed in a blur of preparation. My body healed faster than expected. A benefit of the moon-blessed blood, Lady Cordelia explained. Each morning, she guided me through ancient meditation practices designed to awaken dormant abilities, while each evening, Dominic shared what he knew of Eastern politics and power structures. "Queen Valentina rules through fear rather than respect," he explained, as we sat in our chamber on the eve of her arrival. "She tolerates no challenges to her authority, and has eliminated 3 potential rivals in the past decade alone." I cradled Celine, who watched her father with those unnervingly aware silver eyes. "And she has no moon-blessed in her bloodline?" "None," Lady Cordelia confirmed from her place by the fire. "The Eastern wolves rejected the old ways centuries ago, breeding specifically to eliminate what they called the lunar taint." Her weathered hands continued their constant weaving, creating a complex pattern I couldn't decipher. "They believe physical strength and aggression make superior wolves, yet they come to see our daughter," I mused. "A child they would consider tainted." Dominic's expression hardened. "They come to assess a potential threat, or a potential asset." He paced the room, tension evident in every line of his powerful frame. "Valentina has no heir of her own. Her mate died under questionable circumstances 5 years ago. The implication hung in the air between us. An heirless queen approaching her 5th decade, confronted with a newborn of unprecedented power. She can't possibly think we would give her Celine," I said, tightening my hold on my daughter. "Not willingly," Dominic agreed grimly, "but there are other ways to claim a child. Treaties, fostering arrangements, or simply—" He didn't finish the thought, but I understood. "Theft, kidnapping, war. Then we show strength," I said firmly. "Not just yours as Alpha King, but the strength of the moon-blessed." Lady Cordelia looked up from her weaving, approval in her ancient eyes. "Yes. They must understand that the child is protected by more than physical might." That night, as our daughters slept peacefully in the adjoining room, I dreamed. Not the usual fragments of imagery and emotion, but something more coherent, a dream walking, Lady Cordelia would later confirm. I stood in a grand hall I didn't recognize, its vaulted ceiling painted with stars and phases of the moon. At its center, a woman sat on a throne of twisted metal, her severe features set in an expression of calculated assessment. Queen Valentina, though I had never seen her before. Around her stood wolves in human form, their postures subservient but their eyes watchful and hungry. "The child cannot remain with them," the queen was saying. her voice carrying the rough edge of a growl. The old powers returning to the northern bloodline would upset the balance we've maintained for centuries. And a man stepped forward, tall, lean, with the cold eyes of an executioner. Then we take the child. The mother is newly delivered, the alpha distracted by internal politics. There will never be a better opportunity. Valentina's smile was chilling. The child first, then the territory. The North returns to Eastern rule, as it should have been since the Great Divide. I tried to move, to speak, but in the dream, I was merely an observer. As I struggled against this limitation, the scene began to shift and blur. The queen's head snapped up suddenly, her nostrils flaring as though scenting an intruder. "We are not alone," she hissed, rising from her throne. "Someone watches." Her eyes, cold and predatory, seemed to fix directly on the place where my consciousness hovered. I felt a sharp, painful tug, as though she were trying to drag me fully into the dream space. Then, another presence intervened, tiny but blindingly powerful. Celine. My newborn daughter's consciousness wrapped protectively around mine, shielding me from the queen's psychic grasp. The dreamscape shattered, and I woke gasping in Dominic's arms. "Eleanor." His voice was urgent, his hands gentle on my shoulders. "What happened?" "Your heart is racing." In broken sentences, I described the dream, the Eastern Queen, the plot to take Celine, the moment of detection, and our daughter's intervention. Dominic listened intently, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he turned to Lady Cordelia, who had entered the room silently during my recounting. "Is it possible?" he asked. "Could Eleanor have truly witnessed their counsel?" The old woman nodded slowly. "Dreamwalking at its most powerful allows one to observe distant events. And if Valentina possesses her own gifts, ones she keeps hidden from her pack, she might have sensed the intrusion." "And Celine?" I whispered, instinctively moving toward the cradle where she slept, seemingly peaceful. How could she protect me from within her own sleep? "The child's abilities defy all our understanding," Lady Cordelia said simply. "She acts on instinct to protect what is hers." Dominic moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit mountains. "This changes our approach. We know their intentions before they arrive. But we can't reveal that knowledge without exposing Eleanor's abilities," Lady Cordelia cautioned. "No," he agreed, "but we can prepare a different kind of welcome than they're expecting." Dawn broke clear and cold on the day of the Eastern delegation's arrival. I stood before the mirror in the royal chambers, not the hidden room within the mountain, but the official quarters I had shared with Dominic before Celine's birth. My reflection showed a woman transformed from the disheveled, shamed Omega who had stood before the council days ago. My pale blonde hair was intricately braided, threaded with silver strands that caught the light like moonbeams. The royal blue gown I wore had been specially made overnight, its design unlike the restrictive court fashions I'd endured for 3 years. This garment allowed freedom of movement while emphasizing my connection to the moon. Silver embroidery depicting its phases circled the hem and sleeves. Most significantly, my hair was styled to reveal, rather than hide, the crescent mark on my ear. What had once been my greatest secret was now displayed as a badge of honor. "You look like the queen you truly are," Dominic said, entering the room. He too was transformed. Gone was the severe, intimidating alpha who had ruled through physical dominance. Today he wore traditional northern garb, white and silver, his own mark proudly visible. "Are the children ready?" I asked, anxiety fluttering in my chest despite our preparations. He nodded, coming to stand behind me, his hands resting lightly on my shoulders. "Cora understands her part. The twins will remain with my grandmother in the royal nursery." His eyes met mine in the mirror. "And Celine?" I touched the sling across my chest, where our youngest daughter nestled, awake but silent. "She's calm, almost as if she's waiting." A strange smile crossed Dominic's face. "She probably is." Guards escorted us to the great hall. The same space where I had been publicly shamed days earlier, now transformed. The obsidian throne remained, but beside it stood a second seat of equal height, carved from pale moonstone. The walls, once adorned only with battle scenes, now displayed ancient tapestries recovered from storage, images of wolves running beneath full moons, of humans with silver eyes communing with nature. The pack members who filled the hall were a mixture of those who had witnessed my disgrace and new faces, older wolves from distant northern settlements, summoned by Dominic for this occasion. Their eyes followed me with expressions ranging from curiosity to awe, so different from the contempt I had grown accustomed to. Cora waited beside the thrones, her small form straight and proud in her silver dress. At 3 years old, she somehow projected a dignity beyond her years. When she saw us, her solemn expression broke into a smile that reminded me she was still a child, despite the weight of her heritage. "Remember what we practiced?" I asked softly, as I took my place on the moonstone throne, adjusting the sling so Selena remained close to my heart. Cora nodded, her pale blonde hair catching the light. "I stay quiet until you call me forward. Then I say my name and touch Celine's hand." "Perfect little moon," Dominic praised, taking his seat on the obsidian throne. The great hall doors swung open precisely at midday. The Eastern delegation entered with the disciplined precision of a military unit, rather than a diplomatic party. At their center walked a woman whose presence commanded attention despite her average height. Queen Valentina, exactly as I had seen her in my dream. Her dark hair was pulled back severely from a face that might have been beautiful, if not for the hardness etched into every line. She wore leather armor rather than ceremonial robes, a calculated statement that she came as a warrior, not merely a visiting dignitary. "Alpha King Dominic," she greeted, her voice carrying easily through the hall. Her eyes flicked to me, a momentary surprise crossing her features at my position on a throne equal to his. And his mate, Queen Eleanor, Dominic corrected smoothly, of the moon-blessed bloodline. Murmurs rippled through the Eastern delegation. Valentina's expression remained neutral, but I sensed her reassessing the situation. "We come to pay respects to your newborn," she said, offering a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Word has traveled of unusual markings. Our daughter Selena carries the blessing of the moon," I replied before Dominic could speak, "as do all our children." Valentina's gaze sharpened. "All?" Dominic gestured to Cora, who stepped forward without hesitation. "Our eldest, Princess Cora." To her credit, Cora performed her role perfectly. She approached the Eastern Queen with the proper formal bow, then spoke in a clear voice. "I welcome you to our home, Queen Valentina." The Queen inclined her head, studying my daughter with predatory interest. "Such a well-spoken child, and she carries this blessing as well?" In answer, Cora turned her head slightly, revealing the silver crescent mark on her ear, fainter than mine or Celine's, but unmistakable. "Fascinating," Valentina murmured. Her gaze returned to the sling across my chest. "And the newborn? May I see this silver-eyed miracle?" The moment had come. We had prepared for this, planned each detail, yet fear still clutched at my heart. Revealing Celine's true nature would protect her from kidnapping but expose her to other dangers, yet concealing her would only delay the inevitable confrontation. I rose from my throne, aware of every eye in the hall upon me. With deliberate movements, I loosened the sling and lifted Celine into view. Her silver eyes were wide open, reflecting the light like twin moons. Valentina stepped closer, her composure slipping for an instant. "Impossible," she breathed. "The silver eyes are a myth. Many truths have been dismissed as myths," Dominic said, joining me. "The moon-blessed bloodline has remained hidden but unbroken in the north." The Eastern Queen's eyes narrowed. "Hidden why, I wonder? Shame or strategy?" "Protection," I answered, "until the time was right for return." Something flickered across Valentina's face. Recognition of the prophecy's wording. She was more familiar with the old ways than she pretended. "May I hold her?" she asked, extending her hands. The hall fell silent. This was the moment of greatest danger, the request we had anticipated. To refuse would be a diplomatic insult. To agree would place Celine in the hands of one who had already plotted to steal her. I smiled calmly. "Of course. Cora, come stand with the Queen." My eldest daughter moved to Valentina's side, reaching up to take her hand with innocent trust. The queen appeared momentarily disconcerted by this unexpected contact. As I placed Selene in Valentina's arms, 3 things happened simultaneously. Cora's small hand tightened around the queen's, establishing physical connection. Selene's eyes locked with Valentina's in unwavering focus, and I placed my palm against the queen's forearm, completing the circuit. The dream-walking vision struck like lightning. Not just me this time, but Valentina as well. We stood together in the Eastern throne room from my dream, but now the queen could see me clearly. Around us, the scene replayed, her own words condemning her, the child first, then the territory. The North returns to Eastern rule. As the vision faded, we returned to the present moment in the Great Hall. Valentina's face had gone pale, her arms rigid around Selene. "You," she whispered, her eyes wide with shock as they met mine. "Now you understand," I said softly, taking Selene back into my arms. "My daughter showed you what I witnessed. Your plans are known to us." The queen stepped back, visibly shaken. The tall man I recognized from my dream, her assassin, moved protectively to her side. "A trick," he snarled. "Mind games and illusions. The truth," Dominic countered, his voice carrying the full weight of his alpha authority. "Revealed by the gifts you thought were merely myths." Valentina had recovered some of her composure, though her face remained unnaturally pale. "And now? Will you declare war on the Eastern Alliance for thoughts you claim to have witnessed?" "War benefits neither of our territories," I said, settling Selene back into her sling. "We offer an alternative." Dominic nodded to a guard, who brought forward an ancient scroll. One of many Lady Cordelia had retrieved from hidden archives, a renewal of the original covenant between Northern and Eastern wolves. Written before the Great Divide, when moon blessed from both territories worked together for the protection of all our kind. Valentina's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What does this covenant entail?" "Mutual defense," Dominic explained. "Shared knowledge, an exchange of advisors," he paused meaningfully, "and a formal recognition of the moon blessed as sacred to all wolf-kind, regardless of territory." The queen's laugh was sharp, disbelieving. "You expect me to acknowledge powers my ancestors spent generations eliminating from our bloodline? To admit to my pack that we deliberately weakened ourselves? I expect you to recognize changing winds," I said quietly. "The old magic returns whether you acknowledge it or not. The prophesied time approaches." "The wolves coming home?" she murmured, almost to herself. I didn't hide my surprise. "You know the prophecy." Valentina's expression was complex. Calculation, fear, and something else. Longing, perhaps. There are stories kept by certain families within the Eastern territories. Stories of what was lost in the Purge. For the first time, I considered that the Eastern Queen's interest in Selene might not be solely about power and territory. What if some part of her mourned the gifts her bloodline had systematically destroyed? "Your people could find their way back to the old magic," I suggested. "Not through taking what isn't yours, but through alliance." "The covenant offers protection for your succession as well," Dominic added. "An heirless throne invites challengers, as you well know." Valentina's gaze sharpened. "And what guarantee do I have that this isn't simply a northern ploy to infiltrate Eastern leadership?" In answer, I touched Selene gently, sending her a silent request through the bond we were still learning to navigate. My daughter's silver eyes opened, fixing on the Eastern Queen with that unsettling awareness. "Truth. Show truth." The mental voice was stronger now, more articulate than the fragments I'd sensed before. And with it came a pulse of energy that spread outward from Selene, washing over the entire hall like moonlight made tangible. Gasps rose from both northern and eastern wolves as the sensation passed through them. It carried no specific message, just a pure impression of truth and ancient connection. A reminder of what all wolves once shared before politics and fear drove them apart. Valentina steadied herself against her advisor, visibly affected. "What was that?" she demanded. "A gift," I said simply. "The first of many that could be shared between our territories if you choose alliance over conquest." The Eastern Queen studied me, then Selene. then Dominic. The calculation in her eyes remained, but the hostility had diminished. "I will consider your covenant," she said finally. "My advisors will review the terms." It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either, as she and her delegation withdrew to the guest quarters to deliberate. Dominic took my hand, squeezing it gently. "You did well," he murmured. "Better than we could have hoped." "It was Celine," I said, gazing down at our daughter. She showed more control than should be possible for one so young. Lady Cordelia approached as the hall began to empty, Cora at her side. "The child acts on instinct now, but soon she will need guidance to master her abilities." Her weathered hand touched Celine's head gently. "All of them will." Dominic nodded solemnly. "Then we rebuild what was lost. The training grounds, the sacred texts, the rituals, and the sanctuary," I added, an idea forming that felt right in a way I couldn't fully explain. "A place where moon-blessed from all territories can come to learn, protected by northern laws." "A bold vision," Lady Cordelia said, approval in her ancient eyes. "One that fulfills another part of the prophecy, the return of the sanctuary under a silver-eyed queen's protection." I looked up sharply. "Queen? I'm not—" "You sit on the moonstone throne," Dominic interrupted, a smile playing at his lips. "Equal to mine. Did you think that was merely for show?" Before I could respond, a guard approached, bowing deeply. "Alpha King, Queen Eleanor, the Eastern delegation requests a private audience. Queen Valentina says she has reached a decision." Dominic and I exchanged glances. "So soon," he murmured. "I'll go," I said, a certainty filling me that this was my role now, not just mother to the silver-eyed child, but diplomat between old enemies. "Celine and I together. Are you sure?" Dominic's concern was evident. I touched his face gently. "If she meant us harm, our daughter would know. Trust in that, if nothing else." In a private chamber off the great hall, Valentina waited alone, a gesture of either supreme confidence or vulnerability. When I entered with Celine, she rose from her seat, her expression guarded, but no longer hostile. "Your child," she said without preamble. She showed me something beyond the vision of my council chamber. I settled into a chair across from her, adjusting Celine so she could see the Eastern Queen. "What did she show you?" Valentina hesitated, uncharacteristic uncertainty crossing her features. "My ancestress, the last moon blessed in the Eastern bloodline." Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. "She had the same mark as your daughters. She was executed during the purge on the orders of my direct forefather." The admission clearly cost her, exposing a shameful chapter in her lineage's history. "History cannot be undone," I said carefully, "but the future remains unwritten." "The covenant," she said, straightening. "I will sign it, with one addition." "Which is?" "When your sanctuary is built, Eastern wolves will be welcome there. Those who may carry dormant gifts, hidden for generations." Her eyes held mine with unexpected vulnerability. "My niece has dreams that come true. She hides this ability for fear of being labeled tainted. I would see her learn to use her gift properly." Understanding dawned. "You've been protecting her." Valentina nodded once, sharply. "As best I can, without exposing her. Or myself." "Yourself?" A bitter smile crossed her face. "Why do you think I never produced an heir?" "The taint, as my father called it, doesn't always show in physical marks." She glanced at Celine. "Your daughter knew immediately what I've hidden all my life, the ability to sense truth and falsehood, what you call truth-seeking. The revelation transformed everything I had assumed about the Eastern Queen. Not a power-hungry tyrant, but a ruler protecting her own secret gifts, while navigating the dangerous politics her ancestors had created. The sanctuary will welcome all who carry the old magic," I promised. "Eastern, Northern, Southern. The territories mean nothing to the moon's blessing." "The wolves coming home," Valentina murmured. "Perhaps the prophecy speaks not of conquest, but of healing what was broken." Celine stirred in my arms, her silver eyes opening to fix on the Eastern Queen. Though no words formed in my mind, I felt my daughter's approval, a warm certainty that this moment marked the beginning of something profound. As I left the chamber to bring news of the alliance to Dominic, I passed a tall window overlooking the northern mountains. The crescent moon hung visible in the afternoon sky, a rare daytime appearance that seemed fitting for this turning point. 3 years ago, I had arrived at the northern court as a frightened Omega, chosen for my breeding potential, hiding the mark that made me different. Today, I walked as queen. My daughter's inheritance no longer a secret to be ashamed of, but a legacy to be rebuilt. That night, as I nursed Celine in the quiet darkness of our chambers, Dominic sat beside me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "Do you remember what you said to me before I confronted the council?" he asked softly. "You asked me not to make our daughter's inheritance one of blood and violence." I nodded, watching Selena's eyes drift closed, her tiny hand curled against my skin. "You were right," he continued. "The old ways weren't about dominance or power. They were about balance, strength paired with wisdom, protection with compassion." He touched Celine's cheek gently. "Our daughters will inherit a different world than the one we've known. A better one, I hope," I whispered. "Better because you showed me a different kind of strength," Dominic said, his voice thick with emotion. "The kind that doesn't need to destroy to create change." Outside, wolves howled in the distance, the ancient call of pack to pack, carrying across the mountains. Inside, our daughters slept peacefully, unaware yet of the roles they would play in the changing world. I touched the silver pendant at my throat, my mother's gift, the wolf with her pups beneath the moon. "Our strength isn't always in our teeth," I quoted softly. "Sometimes it's in what we choose to endure." Dominic's hand covered mine. "And sometimes," he added, "it's in what we choose to transform rather than destroy." In her cradle, Selene stirred, her silver eyes opening briefly. Though she made no sound, I felt her consciousness brush against mine, stronger and clearer than before. "The wolves are coming home. Not a warning this time, but a promise. A future where the scattered moon blessed would no longer hide their gifts or fear their differences. Where daughters were valued not for the sons they might someday bear, but for the unique strength they brought to the world." I met Dominic's gaze and saw in his eyes the same certainty I felt in my heart. The path ahead would not be easy. Centuries of fear and prejudice couldn't be undone in days or even years. But we had taken the first steps together, and our daughters would continue what we had begun. The moon blessed us, and we would honor that blessing by becoming worthy of it.